Yeah? Right?
Yes.
Deal?
Boing.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
There's a module for that?
Of course there is.
This attractive, what color is this anyway? Sort of
Azure blue is what we went with.
The guy on the other end of this conversation chose this color and knows that it's called azure blue, apparently. And it has a giant hot air balloon and a bridge, and it's from Drupal camp I just went to a few weeks ago. It is the end of July that we're speaking, and I'm speaking with Rick. So introduce yourself and tell us about this T-shirt.
Okay, so my name is Rick Donahoe, and I'm an account manager from Microserve. So we're based in Bristol, and we've been working with Drupal for a number of years. I think specialising for about maybe 6-7 years now, perhaps. And I think we finally thought it's time to bring Drupal camp to Bristol. I think there's been a few things in the community before. Bristol's got a lot of talent. There's a lot of agencies around here. And we finally pulled together. We got 9 of us on the team. And as of November last year, we started planning for Drupal camp Bristol. And so I was the chairman of that. And over a few months, we kind of got everything together. It was a little bit of a ropey journey. There's a few up and downs, but I'm hoping, you went, and hopefully it was a great time, and hope to do the same thing next year.
West Country represent.
There we go, yes.
So it was a great camp. I really enjoyed it, and I was really, thanks for inviting me, and I was really, glad to have the chance to get to know you better and a lot of the community from out there. Is it fair to say in the UK tech scene at this point, obviously London is the center of everything. And then Brighton has a huge tech scene and a large number of companies and really developed. Is it that sort of filling up and reaching its potential? And I talk with a lot of people who are moving to Bristol. It seems like a really, really nice place to live. And it seems like there's a growing and vibrant tech scene there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, London's, it's always going to be number one. But I think for us, I guess we've got quite a few clients in London. A lot of other agencies in Bristol have the same thing. It's quite an easy train right over there. I think I've been to some of the other camps. I've gone down to Brighton. I go to London every year. One of our developers just came back from Drupal Camp North as well. So you can see that there's obviously a lot of business in all these areas. Drupal's obviously growing around the UK. But I think just by the numbers, you can see that Bristol's there's a lot of people there for it. There's a lot of desire for it, and people are quite happy to travel from London, Brighton. I guess these are all. It's quite accessible. I think that's one of the reasons it works so well for Bristol. It's a city, but at the same time, it's quite a small city. So you can travel maybe 10-15 minutes and you're already out in the countryside, yet you still get everything there that you need in quite a large city. So it's just quite a great place to be. It works quite well for us, I think.
So what do you do at Microserve?
I'm a manager. I actually originally came in as a front-end developer all these years ago. I think like the whole kind of building websites, like the front end, and just had a bit of a knack for chatting. I'm just quite a chatty person. Fell into the client role. And so I've been an account manager here for a few years. I deal a lot with the kind of marketing of the company, positioning, all that kind of stuff as well. So personally, I guess I do quite a bit of everything really. So that's probably why I fell into the role of organising Drupal camp. Quite a proactive person, and somehow managed to find myself in the chairman role, which is great.
Terrific. Account manager is one of those positions where there might be a set of defined, responsibilities around it, but at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that the client's happy and everything is working. And you might have to throw yourself in and fix some code, and you might have to look at the bank account, and you might have to sort of get your colleagues in on you sort of anything that needs doing. You're going to be there, right?
Yeah. It's a bit of a. I think you need quite a broad skill set, and I think the fact that I've came from that developer place as well means that if there's ever a problem, it's not always the case that I'll go off the development team. I'm not really sure. I'm going to be quite hands-on fix things quite fast like that. And like you say, yeah, sometimes get in the code, and I love it. It's great.
How did you first discover Drupal? What was the first time you touched Drupal?
When was that? I think it was perhaps a little bit back in the university days. I think I had a little bit of a play with everything, but not too much. And I guess I got quite lucky, because when I got the job at Microsoft, it was kind of my first role straight from university. So I've been here ever since. And I think Microsoft specialised in Drupal probably a year or two beforehand. Actually, no, more than that. But it was basically what I'd fell into. You know, I came here for a bit of with the web development skills, touching on a bit of everything. And they said, this is what we do. This is Drupal. Basically, get used to it. It's what you're going to be doing for every week, every day. And you look back, and I didn't know anything about the community at the time. I think as a company, we didn't do as much community stuff as we should have. And I guess over the years, things just kept falling into place. We're doing more things, and you start to love it. And I think for me, I don't know if I've got lucky being in the right company, or if things have just turned out quite well in the Drupal world, but it's all just fell into place. And glad it all worked out that way.
What's your favorite thing about Drupal?
It's going to have to be the community, the Drupal camps, the Drupal cons. I mean, you forget how everything works sometimes. You can be in an office, you work with people, and it can just feel this is what you do. I mean, everyone loves it. It works well, so you've got to love it on that aspect. But when you go to a camp or a con and you bring the whole team there, and you kind of forget that it's been a few months, or for some people it's been a year. They've not really been to a Drupal con since the last year, and you just see the kind of spirit. You see how active people are. Everyone's doing the sprints, and you forget about that. You need that. You need to go to camps and cons to really just get the inspiration to drive that fact home that there's a lot of other people out there, and you come back and everyone's motivated. You're thinking, right, Drupal 8, and I'm going to build some modules. I'm going to commit. I'm going to do this kind of stuff. So I think it's that. It's the inspiration you get from the rest of the community. I think that's my favorite part.
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting sort of a motto that we have in the Drupal community. And frankly, companies and employers who don't let their staff go to DrupalCon, don't send them to the local events and really engage with the community, I think they're missing out on something, because for myself and for most anyone I've spoken to, going to talk with the people in person, it's so inspiring, and you learn so much every time. And as soon as you've been in a sprint and done any mentoring or been mentored, you come back a better developer, and you come back more motivated. And it's just such a great energy. And it's odd because, frankly, Drupal is, in theory, that a lot of people would think, well, Drupal is this bunch of code, right? But I always think of Drupal as the people involved in it. So I'm glad you feel the same way. What are you most excited about in Drupal 8? How do you think it's going to change and improve your work?
I think it's just going to be a bit easier for everyone to get involved. I think the idea behind Drupal 8 is there's going to be more things in core. I mean, I look at certain things and think, I can't believe that I use this on every single project. I can't believe that they're not using these certain techniques and certain modules. And I think just having that all out of the box, and it's going to be much easier for new people to pick up, I think, especially if you're just from some of the more non-technical people. I think getting the account managers, the project managers, getting those people involved and actually using the site and being able to put their own touch on things as well is quite important. And when you look at some of these, I guess all the versions of Drupal, it's just it can be a bit developer heavy, and you've got to know what you're doing, what you need to plug in to build the right thing. Just that first step is harder, basically.
Yeah, so I think that the site builder is even more empowered in Drupal 8, right? The non-technical user, the administrator, is enabled to do so much more, connect so many more dots in the UI. And so I'm definitely really, really excited about that. And I should have said this at the beginning, but so we're doing, this is the Acquia podcast. Obviously, this is also part of what I'm calling Jam's Dev Camp now, and it's a bit of an experiment today. the idea of GEMS Dev Camp is it's an ongoing series of sessions that you might see at a conference. Lots and lots of people in our community have great ideas, and they solve hard problems, and they want to share that information, share what they've learned about. And a lot of times there aren't recordings. There's not a really great mechanism for sharing the sessions, the things that people are talking about. And I would like to help out. If I hear about a cool idea or a cool session, I'd really, really love to get it on this format where I can publish it and help promote it and give that person, that presenter, a sort of a canonical source for their session, put the interview and the session and the slides and everything together on a page where anyone in the community can find it and learn from it. And so far I've had quite a few technical sessions, and I've had some more business-oriented sessions. Now, you, Rick, are my first experiment with getting a case study presentation onto GEMS Dev Camp. I saw you do this in Bristol, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought it would be fun to round out this podcast with you going through your case study for the Roman baths in Bath, and which is a project that Microsoft did. And so if you're listening to the podcast, we're going to let Rick go through the session now, but in the video version of this, which you can find on acquia.com and on YouTube, the actual slides will be running as well. And I'm going to embed the slide deck on the session page at GEMS Dev Camp on acquia.com. So come check those out too. Here we go with the case study experiment. Rick, are you ready?
I think I am, yes.
Okay.
Good stuff. Okay. So here's my case study that I did back at Drupal Camp Bristol. It's based on the Roman baths. And as you can see, we tried to put this in 50 minutes. It's I think it was a little bit quick at the time because being Northern, I think I've got a very fast-speaking voice, which I'm going to try and slow down a little bit today. But here's the URL. It's www.romanbaths.co.uk. Like people to go check out the site. There's actually a group of sites. So I've not actually covered any of them in the presentation today, not done many screenshots. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the project itself today. So the Roman baths is the name of this case study. It's on Drupal.org and hopefully soon on Drupal.com. And we actually use that as a term for 6 sites altogether. So this is Baths World Heritage, it's the Roman Baths, the Fashion Museum, Victoria Art Gallery, Baths Historic Venues, Bath Record Office, and the City of Bath World Heritage. So the Roman Baths is the largest out of the 6. I think it gets about 200 to 300,000 views per month. So for case studies and for kind of marketing, we use Roman Baths as the term for this set of sites. So I'll give you an overview about the project. This is run by Microserve and Torchbox in collaboration. Torchbox, they're a full-service Drupal agency. They're based in Oxford and also have an office in Bristol. And those guys, they're great. They do the design, the UX. They actually do the kind of full service. But Microserve, what we do is we specialize in the Drupal development aspect. We've got about 20 guys in our team, 12 of them developers, and we've got, I guess, quite a heavy development focus. So that's where we specialize. That's our skills. So we came together. We saw the opportunity to work on this together, and we pitched ourselves. We said, let's work with our specialities. These guys can do the UX design. Microserve can deal with the build, and from then I've took on the account management. So the sites, these were previously built in the depreciated immediacy CMS. So they had, I think the council had been working with Drupal before. They knew they wanted Drupal, which was obviously quite an easy sell for us. And it was basically a complete redesign, rebuild, and migration project. At the time, they had 5 sites. So on my last slide, I talked about the City of Bath World Heritage. That was actually a new requirement on the brief. So they had their own look and feel. They said that we want to build something where they can each have their own brand, their own identity, and we just want to improve the general structure and the UX of the sites. So we took that, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems we face. I thought for a 15-minute presentation, I could probably talk about a lot of things. I could go into certain details. I could come at this with a few angles. But instead, I'd like to pick out 3 problems and tell you a little bit about how we solve them. Hopefully, that's something that you guys can take away, as developers, as account managers, as clients. Maybe there's hopefully a little bit for everyone. So here's the key problems. Firstly, the client wanted 5 websites with no fixed cost budget. Now, this soon expanded to 6. And you look at this and you say, well, with the full the UX, the design, the build, and this is a fixed cost budget. So I'm sure you'd be aware that can be quite tricky as it is. But when people start adding sites on, and it's going to get tricky. We thought, how do we look at this? We had to come up with a certain workflow that was going to allow us to easily build a range of sites there. The second one, the brief required automated migration of content. Now, this is something that I've kind of talked about in a bit more detail. I think it's a bit of a red flag to me. So you've got this idea that they say, hey, we've got this old site, or sites in this case. They're outdated, they don't look good, our users get confused. Basically, we want something new, we want something shiny, basically go through, do the lot. But here's the thing, a lot of people then say, we want to migrate the content. Now, that kind of baffles me, because you say we want a new site, we want new this, we want new that, but we want to use our old content. Now, that's just a bit of a red flag for me, and I think that content migration from outdated sites just isn't going to work too well. So I'll come back to that in a bit. And lastly, we had this idea that the content editing team had this perception of tech fear. I think they were just a little bit scared of how they'd use the sites, this idea that they wanted to use Drupal, because I'd say they wanted to use Drupal. I think they were quite excited about it, but also, like I said, the council used it. And I think they just thought that it could be a little bit tricky. They were worried about the kind of training they'd need. And they had these content editors that were, I guess, slightly siloed for each different site as well. So it was a larger team, but it was quite spread out. And I think they were a little bit worried about that. So what I'll do is I'll go into each of these three problems. So the first solution I want to talk about is the design and workflow and how we got those things right. Like I said before, it's the idea of building multiple sites in a fixed cost budget. So we really had to put a bit of time into this and to get this right. So let me talk about this one. I'll tell you from a technical point of view how we built the site. Is that we built Rowan Bass as a single site first. We used features-driven development, and the idea that we could build, say, so I'll give you an example here. Rowan Bass, Fashion Museum, and Victoria Art Gallery, they all have events, but the other three sites don't have events. We have things like Rowan Bass that has walkthroughs. We have Bath Venues that has venues and the associated rooms in there. So what we did is we used features-driven development to build everything and kind of package it together. The idea here is that we built the Rowan Bath sites. We worked with a little bit of tweak and UAT there and got that live first. And then once we did that, we could then copy the site over, and we could simply just enable or disable features, and that would just provide us with exactly what we want on the site. And that just allowed us to provide these 6 sites in this fixed cost budget. So we put, like 85, 90% of the work into the first site, and then we just span things off quite easy. Yet we still had different code bases for each, or at least I say individual code bases. We had it in Bitbucket, so we had a master repository, but we were still able to customize each site. And I'll talk a couple of things here. So firstly, Pantheon One, this is something we use for the hosting, and we use Pantheon up to now, but over this last few weeks, we've actually just gone through a process to move the hosting away from Pantheon. And I'll tell you a little bit about this. So at Microserve, we have used Pantheon. We're Pantheon partners. I guess we still are, but there's a big problem with Pantheon, and they don't have a European data center. So what we have this issue, and I think I talked a little bit about this at DrupalCamp. They work really well, but there's a certain size of projects you get to where they say, oh, hey, data protection is an issue. We need to have a UK data center. So it's put us in a position where Pantheon have been great for the small projects. They can spin things up quite easy. But everything after that, we've had to move to larger things. So say people such as Acquia, who actually have European data centers. So we've had to have a little bit of a move, and that kind of coordinates with a certain size of project. Lastly, I'd like to touch on here is the theme. So using this feature-driven development, which I talked about before, we're able to use a single base theme. So this is the SaaS on base theme. We're able to use a base theme. So you had a sub-theme of this, where you called the heritage theme. We built everything for the site, structure, the layout, the content. And then each site had its own single sub-theme, should I call that? So the sub-theme, that was each site had its own colors, fonts, styles. And we have to use mixins. So mixins variables, we define these in the base theme, and then we simply override these as variables in each of the themes. So this is the kind of purple color that Ron Vassar uses. All your kind of different styles that each site uses. Basically, it's unique brand identity. We're able to define this per site and then commit this to each individual repository. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea about the design and workflow that we chose here, so we could easily send out 6 sites within the budget. The content issue. So this is another thing I asked about, GatherContent. I think a number of people have used it. It's basically a content staging platform. And we use it on the site, and it's good, but it's not great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So when people come up with this automated migration, like I said before, it feels outdated to me. It doesn't feel right. So you're talking, you want a new site, but you don't want new content. You know, I saw that as a red flag, and luckily we managed to discuss this with the clients. We'd kind of set the budget expectations before, and we said, you know what, here's a better idea. How about we use this content stage platform, GatherContent? And I'll be honest, we hadn't used it before, so it was quite new to us. We had to spend a little bit of time just playing around with it, but it seemed to do what we needed. So what we do with GatherContent is we can build the site and we can set up GatherContent. So the idea here is that you're removing the reliance. It's not a case of, hey, we'll spend a few months building the site, and then we'll let you guys spend a month or two doing your content. What we did instead is we made this parallel. So we said we'll build the site, and whilst we're building the site, we'll also set up the same content types in GatherContent, and then we'll pass this over to the content editors, and they can actually start rewording their site, rewording their content. They can start building upon there, tweaking it at the same time. The development team, the content editing team, they work in sync. That way, we're managed to release the sites in a much easier, much faster method. So, what kind of worked quite well about this is that the team hadn't really seen content types. They weren't really certain about what they were going to get with their new site. Whereas with GatherContent, you can actually build each content type. So we had our events, we had our news, walkthroughs, venues. We had a number of different content types, and this was a great introduction to the content development teams, content editing team. So they kind of logged on, they started using it. They found it reasonably easy to use at first, but the main idea is they were getting used to the different content types in the fields. So by the time we actually brought this into Drupal, they weren't shocked at all. They found it quite easy to work with. They said, well, we've been using these fields, we've been using these field types, so we actually feel like we know what we're doing now. So that was a great advantage there. But the problem with GatherContent is I would still recommend it to anyone, but to us it felt like it was a version 1 gone on to version 2. It was there was a few kind of issues, and as we started talking with the support team, they actually released the version 2 updates mid-project. So there was a couple of things that we saw that would work well that we didn't manage to kind of utilize at the time. And the problems I'm talking here was getting all the fields right. So this is something luckily we managed to spot quite soon. We had to set the expectations right at the client. You've basically got this idea that for each content type, certain things like the titles, text areas, images, files, these things work quite well. But as soon as you bring a complex field, so if you're looking, say, date fields and select lists, we had a little bit of trouble with them. And I guess node reference, you can't even get started with that. That's something that we had to wait for the site. So what we had to say to the client is, here is our solution. We think it's going to fill maybe 70, 80% of your needs. But what's going to happen is that when we migrate this into the site, we will require you to go through and cross-check things and also just finish off everything as well. So you still will need to link some of your node references. You'll still need to tidy up a few little things. So as I said here, it's a halfway tool. And because there's a module you can easily migrate GatherContent into Drupal, that's why it works. So it gave us the idea of migrating their content from a staging platform. So they were able to take their own content and rewrite it. So it did the job. And like I say, it was improving, but I'd still recommend it for anyone who just wants to have a staging platform and to cut the project time down. And lastly, here's the third solution. So this is one of the things that I swear I talk about quite a lot. And the idea is, it's the admin interface. Now, I guess a few people can probably agree with me here. The Drupal out of the box, it is confusing. And I know we've said before, I think Drupal 8's trying to improve upon this. But when you put a Drupal 8, when you put a Drupal 7 site together, there's quite a lot of stuff going on. And you can imagine that you log into a site as a content editor, and there's a lot going on. I'm just going to quickly show you this admin interface here. You can see this is my login as an admin. I'm sure you're all aware of all these kind of tabs at the top: content, structure, people, configuration. There's a lot of things you can do with Drupal sites. So you really need to put that extra little bit of work in just to fine tune it and get it right for the content editor, so you don't scare them. So what I'm going to show you here is this you can see on the screen share is a special administration area that we created for the content editing team. So what we did here is we used, you can see in the top, we've got heritage config. We created their own admin menu there. And here's the kind of landing page. Within here, we've got each of these tabs that represents certain content which wasn't content types. So these are entity types. So we had our homepage carousel slide, homepage links, gallery items, special offers. We had all these things put into an easy administration area. And we had the site-specific settings and these kind of things all in one place. So they weren't going around editing blocks or doing anything weird. Everything was just put into one single place. We said, here you go, and it doesn't even need any training. You can log in, you can see exactly what you're doing here. So I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. So here's my tips. This is admin interface. Now, I've, as an account manager, I do quite a few site audits. I inherit a lot of legacy sites, and I've got to tell you, I've seen some horrible sites. So the idea here is where most people fall down. It's all about they build quite good looking, quite beautiful sites, but then you log into them and it's just it's scary. You see so much going on. The techniques people use can just be crazy. So one of the things I'm going to start from the bottom here. People build things like slideshows, they build testimonials, these things that you show on the page, but you don't actually land on the page. So my first tip here is separate your content types from your entities. A content type is quite a few people might be, some of the technical guys might be listening here. The content type is just, to me, it's an entity, but with a URL. So if you expect to Google something and land on a page, that to me is a content type. Use your default Drupal content types, things for your news, your events, your pages. Whereas all these other little things, build them as entities. And entities out the box in Drupal, some people might be aware, I really hate how they're done out the box, the whole going through the menu to build and edit these things. It's not friendly for the content editing team. So I say build an administration view so they can manage everything in one place like you saw from that last slide. So there's a few things that I say, the development team really doesn't need to spend much time on the interface. With a few hours, if not even a day, you can just build something that just makes your life so much easier. Now, you can spend hours and hours having the client call on you and saying, how do I do this? How do I do that? Or if you just spend those few hours initially, kind of build it, get it right, you'll find it's intuitive. The editors will just know what they're doing. It just works. So here's a few tips for you. So there's a few modules that we put on all our sites that make things simple. The Adminimal theme, the Adminimal menu, and the administration views. Now, these just give a nice, clear, crisp backend theme. Administration views also replaces some of the kind of clunky views out the box. So you've got your content overview screen, your comments, your users. What it is it replaces these with something that just makes it all searchable, a bit more manageable, easy to find the content they're looking for. There's other little modules. So things like, say, CKEditor Link was an example I've put here. Now, this is just something where in your WYSIWYG, if you want to link to another piece of content, you just simply type the title and it will autocomplete as a node reference, rather than when people start pasting absolute links and relative links. And, you see these things where you're on the live site and one of the content editing teams has pasted a link back to the development team on a staging site, and you're kind of banging your head against the wall and you're trying to explain. Has anyone ever tried to explain the difference in an absolute link and a relative link to someone who's not very technical? It's mental. So there's a few of these things that just make your life easier, and these are literally, commit them, enable them, and out the box things are just so easy. So that's what I'm going to give you a takeaway there. Use these easy module wins, as I call them. Getting the WYSIWYG and the permissions right is the last thing here to get right. So it doesn't need much time at all. So have you ever been into a WYSIWYG where you go on and you've got all the buttons enabled? You've got this like the format. You can change the font. You can change the font color. You can change the size. And this is mental to me because people will start taking this away, and next thing you know, people have got little small purple words here and neon green, size 24 pixel font here. And no one wants to see that. So what you've got to do, you've got to limit it. And the key thing to take away from this area of my presentation is to limit things. Only give the content editing team what they need. Because if you don't confuse them, it's going to make your life easier. They're going to find it easy to do, and it's just going to work so much better. So from my point of view, in your WYSIWYG, never give them H1s. That's what your title is. That's going to kill your SEO. Limit them to your kind of H2, H3, your kind of basic tags. Limit the buttons, don't give them a full suite of everything where they can change things. Remember that you're the developer, you put your style guide together, setting the kind of styling and types. This is something that the CSS should do. It's not something that the content editing team should do. And they don't need to be clogged with all these buttons. Just don't do it, basically. And permissions, lastly. So there's quite a few sites that I've had clients come to me, and they're worried, and you're not really sure why they're worried, because it's Drupal, it's good, it does what you need, and then you log in as them and you see that they've literally got this user one permissions, and they'll say things to me. They say, oh, it said there was some module updates, so I decided to run this. And you're thinking, no, don't do that. You shouldn't. You're not the developer, and it's not their fault. It's because you shouldn't have those permissions. So when you're building the site, you need to build these different roles for everyone. You need to have this idea that you've got the development team, you've got the content editors team, you might have advanced editors, you might have kind of lower level editors. You need to be able to set them from the start and make sure you set your permissions right, because as soon as you do that and they log in and you see what they're saying, all they want to do sometimes is just edit content. There's nothing else they need to do. Sometimes maybe add and edit users. They don't need to go through it and start doing structure and blocks and themes and configurations. This is one of the poor cells that people will do with Drupal. Drupal does so much for people, but you don't need to give your clients so much as well, because it's just going to baffle them. So I'm going to finish up here and say, why did the project go so well? Without blowing my horn here, here's a few takeaways that I'd recommend to other people. So we worked with Torchbox on what we call in-browser designs. I think I might have kind of skipped over this a little bit in the early slides, but the idea was, when they provided us the designs, they actually did it in browser. So we had fully working prototypes, and we then took them and made them into a Drupal theme. Now, my favorite quote of the project is the client turned around when we got to about UAT stage. We said, okay, we're ready to show you the site. Obviously, you've seen the prototype, so we didn't feel the need to show it too much sooner than this, but we want to get something you can start playing with properly. And they said, wow, it looks just like the design. And we're sitting there going, yeah, it is the design, basically. They provided us that, and that's what we took. So we skip this area that when you work on a project and you get towards the end and they say, oh, the padding's not right there, or there's a little bit of change, some pixels here, all that kind of niggly stuff that you just don't need at the end of the project. It cut that out. So we took that, and the stuff that came back, the kind of amends in UAT, it was small functional things. It was like, this view, this search, we want to be able to, can we add a sort criteria here? Can we slightly change this? Can we change a little bit how the language and the search things work? It was smaller functional things. It wasn't those annoying front end bugs that you see, because Torchbox had already perfected that. And I've got to give it to them. Torchbox did a fantastic job, fully responsive, all devices, the browsers. We gave them a good list of what we supported, and we found barely any bugs came back. They did a really good job of testing that, and they provided us with something that was brilliant. So I think Ben Enright was their lead designer from Torchbox. So I'm going to plug him now. That was some great work from him there. Cheers, Ben. And so our second point here is, I think I've kind of gone over this in the last slide, is promote the healthy editorial team. So one thing that I find, and this, I still don't know if I've got the best technique to get over this, and I kind of welcome some advice from other people, but we use Assembler as our online ticketing tool. And with each project, what we'd like to do is we'd like to get the clients involved, setting tickets. The idea is with a ticketing system, I think Acquia actually kind of force people to use Zendesk so they don't start getting calls and emails and stuff. But I think sometimes when you're on a new project, I don't know if it's maybe on our behalf or like a training, but I just simply find that some clients just do not want to use a ticketing system. And I've even had some clients almost get quite argumentative because they're just saying, we just want to call you, we just want to email you. Now, the way I've kind of gone around this is that you need to accept this at the start of a project, and you need to say, do you know what? Here's my number. Call me. Just call me whenever you want. And what you do is you get quite a few phone calls at the start, and some people say, well, this is a bit annoying, this is a waste of my time. But as an account manager, you actually start getting this. You get this kind of personal approach to the client. You start knowing what's their problems. You can see they start to say, oh, this is really easy. I really like that, and you can hear the kind of stress in their voice when they say, I'm not really sure what I'm doing in this area. So you can start to see where their problems lie, what you need to build to improve upon this. And what you'll have is you will have a lot of phone calls at the start, but that will massively drop down because they will just start, they get that confidence with you. You're helping them. You kind of promote this editorial team that when you talk to people, you need them to start feeding back to the other members of the team. You can start feeling what their needs are. So at the start of the project, and it's not just this project, it's quite a few projects. They say, in a budget, can you factor in some training time? And I hate training days. I can't think of anything worse than going to sit in front of a room full of people and trying to train them about Drupal and how you can edit content on any site. It's quite hard. It's not my favorite job at all. And I don't think it's the best thing for the team sometimes. If you build the site right, if you make things intuitive, simple to use, and you just start with the idea of, give me a call, let's talk things through, you'll find that it tails off. People find things easy. And to this point, we've not really had, I rarely get any calls or any support tasks from the client. They find the site easy to use. Another thing to mention here, I should probably, without jumping back too far, out of our support using Pantheon or using any kind of platform, so say you use Acquia, Platform SH, all these people, if you use an actual Drupal specific hosting platform, you will find your out of hours support is massively cut down. We've not had a single out of hours support task required. People who use their own kind of internal hosting, personally, I think it's dead. It causes everyone headaches, the system admin time. I could go into a whole other presentation on this, but there's two things, that's going to cause a happy client. Use the right platform, get it right from the start. It's unbelievable how much little support you actually give the client in these basic areas if you get that stuff right from the start. And my last point here is the 80-20 rule. So some people who are listening will probably recognize this. I'm sure it's been drilled at quite a few DrupalCons, Drupal camps. It's this Drupal idea that everything you build, the first 80% of it is very easy, but the last 20% of it is quite hard. So as a bit of a final tip from an account manager's perspective, they can say, hey, Rick, I'd like this, can you, here's a new feature, can you change this, can you build that? And you say, I start getting my technical head on, and I'm thinking, okay, I can build that, I can use views to do this, I can do a little bit of manipulation to do this, and the cogs are turning in my head. I'm thinking we can build most of that, but there's just a little bit at the end there that's not going to be right. And if you're working on, say, a fixed cost project, and the client never quite often doesn't understand how much work things are, they'll say, can you build this and this and this? And they might think that they're all quite similar tasks, but to your development team, you've got one task that might take you a few hours, another task that might take you a few more hours, and another task that sounds the same, but actually it's going to take you 3 days because this last 20% is actually really hard. If you have a few tasks and the client thinks that they can be all quite similar level, it actually doesn't always end up being that case because of this 80-20 rule. You can build something and think, I'm just going to use a module for that, or I'm just going to do something else for this, plug a few bits together, a little bit of views. But sometimes you think this last task might be a little bit custom. And this, what I was trying to say there is it can cause some bad discussions with the client, because if they're on a fixed cost budget or they're not really aware of what they're spending, they think that three tasks, for example, might be quite similar. But actually, one of these tasks is much harder because there's just maybe one bit of what they've asked for is just a little bit hard. It's a little bit custom. And the idea is that you need to manage these requests. So if a client's asking for a number of tasks, this is one thing that worked quite well on this project. They said, oh, can we change that or can we add that? And I was saying, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. And yes, we could do this, but we just need to slightly change what you said there, because most of what you can, this 80-20 rule, 80% of what you want done could actually maybe be done in a few hours, but that final 20% is actually going to be a few days more. And if you let the client know that there is going to be slight issues, let them know about that. Your development team will get excited because they'll go, oh, this is really complex. I can't wait to take this away and build it. But the client will end up paying more money, and that's just going to cause a little bit of friction. So you need to kind of manage requests. And what I say is, if everything is doable in Drupal, but sometimes you need to explain to the client that it's going to be a little bit harder to do something, and maybe suggest alternatives. So that was my last kind of tip on this one here. And of course, I'm just going to finish this up by saying, of course, a great team. Microserve, Torchbox, even everyone involved on Path Heritage Services sites. We just had a great team, all pulled together quite well. So I should lastly just finish off this by saying, thank you to all the guys involved there. And there we go, Jam. That's the end of my presentation. I hope it was as good, if not better, as Duplicate Bristol. Obviously, people weren't there in person, but thank you.
Yeah, sorry that the clapping and the cheering you added something to it in Bristol, of course.
I was hoping you'd clap me at the end there. But thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. That's really, really cool. And it's a beautiful set of sites. I highly encourage people to go and have a look at those. Obviously, I will include links to the various bits and pieces that we've been talking about today. And,
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like it was a really interesting project. I think there's a number of things that make complete sense, and some of the workflow ideas about sort of building big templates and then using smaller versions of them along the way was really, really cool. And obviously it's worked out for you. I encourage everyone to go and visit these sites, and even visit the real place in Bath. It's very, very nice. It's about an hour from where my mother lives, so I've been there myself. Rick, thank you for taking the time to do this. Do you want to give us a shameless plug for Microserve before we go?
I'm sure I can do that. So yes, we're at Microserve. We're based in Bristol. We're development specialists. We tend to focus on not so much the design and the UX part, but the whole build. We're very technical. So I'm sure you guys who are listening, check us out. Microserve.io is the website, and you'll probably see us at DrupalCamps, DrupalCons. And of course, if anyone's got any questions about this, or my talk, DrupalCamp, anything they want to talk to me about, to be honest, come find me. Give me a shout. My email is rick@microserve.io, and you can also check out the website, and that gives us good out of there.
Great. I'll put some contact info on the post with this as well. Thanks also, Microserve, for loaning us this very, very beautiful storeroom this morning. Rick's been locked in the closet for the last hour to do this.
Quite literally, yes.
Rick, thanks again for taking the time. It's been really, really fun. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jam. Cheers, Sam. Good stuff.
Rick.
Cheers, Jam. See you later.